My name is Claus, and in this video we're going to talk about something essential. It's an overlooked thing that I don't hear anybody teach, but it's so important that it can really make or break you when it comes to practicing. And it's very practical, it's very real, and it's so valuable, it's crazy. So stick with me. This is a lesson that's categorized under advanced, or you could say, intermediate at least. But anyone can benefit from this, so stick with me. What we're talking about, integration, what is that? Well, anything you learn, of course, has to go with anything you already have learned, right? So if you learn, let's say, a chord, right? You know to play a C major chord, right? Just to keep it simple. Then, of course, when you go from a C major chord to a G major chord, that shift there's something in between there, isn't there? Right? I played C, I play G, right? Then there's a movement from this C. Every finger has to travel a unique path to get to that chord. So that's what's in between. And from C to, let's say, E minor, that's a different traveling, right? The fingers each finger has to go from one point to another, and that whole thing has to be coordinated or choreographed, right? In order for you to make that shift. We never talk about that for some weird reason. And that means that if you go from a C to a G, or C to an E minor, C to an F, those are different things. It's not just 3 or 2 or 1 singular chord. It's also the moving in between, and that's integration. So if for instance, I can keep on giving you examples here. So let's just do another one. Let's say you are practicing, that's a good example, like the 5 cage shapes of the pentatonic here. Right? Then that's the first one, then that's the second one, and so on, right? And then you struggle to kind of go horizontally. Why? Well, because you haven't integrated the shapes, right? You haven't, again, gone from one to another. And yes, I have, Claus, yes, but we don't see it as something essential, first of all, and as something necessary, and as something equal to what we already learned. And that's the bad news about this, that, learning 2 shapes is one thing. There's one thing learning the first shape, if that's how you work, right? Right? And then it's the second thing, 2 things to learn the second, and then the third thing is to combine them. And you're going to spend an equal amount of time combining them as you are learning each individual one of them. Right? So here's a mass of learning, here's another mass of learning, that's 2 shapes. And then you have to spend that amount of time, 1 plus 2, to learn how to integrate them. So you can go back and forth between them, right? In any like that. And because we don't see it, because it's not part of our philosophy, we struggle and we wonder why we cannot go back and forth between them. Isn't that amazing? That just because we don't see it as part of guitar practicing as such, or we expect that, hey man, I know this one, and I know that one, why can't I go back and forth? Because you need to practice it. The answer is so simple. Okay, so the next example, right? We struggle to learn alternate picking, or we basically struggle to learn anything, don't we? Right? It's a struggle. There's this initial wall whenever we try to learn something that we have to push through because it seems new and it's right? But if I learn to go, for instance, I learn to do legato, then how do I get into my alternate picking routine? How do I get into my sweep picking? These techniques need to be integrated. And I need to do exercises that involves, for instance, if I want to integrate my sweep picking technique with my legato technique, I need to do right? I need to do exercises that involves both. So they get glued together. And so in my brain, in my fingers, I create a bridge from one to the other. And I need to create quite a few of them. So whenever you into a technique, you get, let's say you start practicing legato and you're super good at sweep picking and alternate picking, then as soon as you get to a certain level with legato, then already I would start integrating. That's what I do with a jam track in the background. And I do it with little exercises. That's where I start, right? So I might take, like, say, a little 2-1-2 shape, like. Once I've been practicing that, I want to start going, right? I want to start mixing that with hammer-ons and pull-offs, and I'm sure I will do videos about that so we can go into the technicalities of it. But that's specific, you know, combining alternate picking with legato. Here are some exercises, right? And then I want to do these little exercises, so I teach my fingers how to do it, and then I want to put on a jam track, and then I want to go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth between the different techniques and come up with little loops that I can play over and over and over again in order for me to merge what the new thing I learned with the old. Even though I don't master legato yet, just if I have some amount of proficiency, I want to go integrate right away and mix it with other things. Another example, it's everywhere, right? But because we don't see it, because it's kind of the holes in between the words. We need the holes, we need the little breaks in between the words. Otherwise we can't understand the words, right? They don't work. So, and we hold little pauses in between the sentences in order to kind of complete that. That's one meaning, right? That sentence. Here is one meaning. Here's another. So we have breaks, right? But without the breaks, it won't make sense because it, right? That's why we have, you know, commas and all these things when we write. But we don't talk about them. Right? We don't see them because it's the holes, right? So when we talk about, you know, techniques, we think about the technique, not what goes in between the technique. So another example is when you learn a sequence, like say, something like that, a systematic way of playing up and down the scale, or you learn a lick like, right? If you learn anything like that, then that's cool. And I used to do that all the time. I learned a ton of sequences, a ton of licks, and then I was trying to solo, and I couldn't solo. Because what would I do with these, right? It's like having, I can create Lego blocks. Now I have a red Lego block, and I have a blue Lego block, and a green, and a big one, and a small one, and a flat one, and a tall one. But I haven't practiced putting them together. And I have to do that. That's the most important, first you learn something, and then you learn how to use that with other things, right? It makes sense, but we really need to focus on it as a natural, very logical next step whenever we learn something, whether it be a chord or whatever it is. So when I learn a lick, right, I want to integrate that with my whatever is the things I used to play. So I'm just going to put on a jam track in the background, right? So I'm beginning to change it. I'm adding vibrato here. I'm adding a slide there. I'm adding a new note. And I'm using it with the other things I already know in order for me to have that lick melt into the whole. Then I use a sequence like that. Right? Then I want to sit down, jam track in the background. So I want to start taking that sequence, beginning with something else, going into the sequence, out of the sequence into something else, back and forth, adding vibrato, sliding, whatever, right? So that's the whole process. And as soon as I realized that, I went from knowing a lot of things and being pretty good at a lot of things, suddenly my soloing came together. Suddenly my chord work came together. Suddenly my rhythm with my rhythm guitar work came together. Everything came together because integration is coming together, right? So please write this down on a piece of paper, put it on the wall so you can't forget. Integrate. And you might have a lot of things you want to integrate already because you know a lot of things. You've got a lick there, a sequence there, a chord there, a rhythm there that you need to use with other things at the same time. So have fun doing that, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.